Several days ago, I had a good conversation with my friend Brian Baldwin. And true to form, Brian lives in Oklahoma, and with Oklahoma technology, we had struggled getting everything to work. We eventually got everything sorted out and were able to have a great conversation. Brian spent years on staff as a pastor before he went to work for the Baptist General Convention of Oklahoma, working as their youth ministry evangelism strategist. And he helped do Falls Creek, which is the largest youth camp in North America. And throughout the year, was able to invest in close to 50,000 students annually. And he did that for close to a decade. And then came to a crossroads where he wasn't sure where God was going to lead him next. Join us as we talk about all those years of ministry, how God led him through that time, and what God is doing with him and his family now. Today on Call to Lead. Hello, welcome once again to the Call to Lead podcast. I'm your host, Colby Rich. With me today is my friend Brian Baldwin. Brian is a jack of all trades when it comes to sharing the gospel, preaching, teaching. He's currently serving at a church, and we'll get to that in a minute, and a newer church he's been at. For the last year or so, he started a new nonprofit ministry called the Good News Journey, and we'll get into that. And he spent years working for the Baptist General Convention of Oklahoma, helping plan and teach at their Falls Creek youth camp, largest youth camp in North America, and did that for years and years. And so we're just going to talk about his story, where God has taken him and where God's leading him now. Brian, good to be with you today, my friend.
Man, thank you so much for having me on, Colby. Looking forward to this.
Well, to start off, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and your family?
Yeah, so married my middle school sweetheart, Candace. We met in kindergarten. It's kind of a cute story. Check yes or no note. She checked yes, and
It
I wrote a
works.
country song about us later. I don't know if you heard it or
Yeah.
not, but anyways, we got married pretty young, 19 years old, and did college and seminary. We had a first child, Mackenzie. She's now 19. Madison, she's 16. Jonah is seventh grade, and we have a kindergartner, Jack. So we have four kids, and just trying to be faithful to serve the Lord and the open doors that He's put before us. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit. That's a short version of it.
Well, I want to get to some of that about some of the doors that have opened and closed, because that's a really interesting and cool part of y'all's story. First, though, how did you come to faith in Christ? Tell us about that. How you became a Christian?
Yeah, I wasn't raised in church. I was kind of raised going to the lake on the weekends, and but I always knew there was a God. It was like creation, duh, creator. But I always just thought, me and God meet someday. I mean, I'm not like a terrorist or some serial killer or something like that. Surely we'll be fine. And then I realized God's standard of goodness was a lot higher than mine. And man, so when I was a teenager, for about 6 months, man, God's spirit was just heavy on me, and I actually went to a play. A family friend invited us to it. It was called Heaven's Gates and Hell's Flames. It sounds kind of intense, but it was really just a wake up call I needed, that if I stand before the judgment and Jesus doesn't pay for my sins, I'm going to pay for my sins. And it was, man, just a real thing. And invitation came at the end, and I called on the Lord. Somebody helped me call on Jesus as best I could. And I was born again. I was about 14 years old. And I will say that that heaviness turned into a river of peace immediately. And I've never doubted once if I'm saved. I wasn't dependent on myself to be saved, and I'm not dependent on myself to keep myself saved. And that's been a big blessing in my life. And it's man, I think about that moment in time changed everything for me. And so that's the story of all of us that are born again, I guess you can say.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned that you're not the one who did the savings. So you're not the one who has to continue saving. I love that, because so many people do get caught up on, especially students. And I know you've worked with students most of your ministry, your time in ministry, and mine as well. And so many times dealing with students, and adults too, but they have that deal of, I messed up so bad. Will God still love me? Will God still forgive me? Am I still a Christian because I've run away for a time period? And man, that's just so awesome. And so, such a wonderful reminder that scripture says that when you're in Jesus' hand, nothing can snatch you away. You can try to run sometimes, and you can be disobedient for a time period, but if you're his, you're his,
Yeah.
and you
Once you're a
can't get
child of
away from
God,
him.
you're
Yeah.
always a child of God. That's right.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that assurance that we have. And tell us about how you decided to be a ministry? You're called to ministry, that decision to say yes to that.
Yeah, really at first, I didn't know what I was gonna do. All I knew I was wanna marry Candace. That's all I knew. Like, I definitely wanna marry that girl, and whatever job I need to do, that's great. But I've always I was a leader in the student ministry, after I was saved, actually following Candace over to church at Woodland Hills Baptist Church. I was discipled. My youth pastor and I are still like best friends to this day. And he discipled us as about as deep as you can disciple somebody. We actually, one season in our life, we spent like 4.5 years living in his backyard in a garage apartment, going to college, and he helped us, and we did dinners together. We shared the ministry together. But when I was 19, I really just it was just confirmed that I was called the youth ministry, and I always kind of thought you needed some kind of, I don't know, road to Damascus like story,
Mhm.
because my youth pastor had that. It was like he showed up at the church in the middle of the night to pray about being the youth minister at the church, and 1 in the morning, the pastor of the church also came in to pray about the exact same thing. And it was like, "Okay, so that's how that works." And, I didn't have any of that kinda thing, or I didn't have, like, a supernatural calling, and I just knew, man, I'm passionate about student ministry, and I kinda have a knack for it. I had an ability to do it. And then I also, there were open doors in front of me to do it. And actually, it was through listening to a guy named Dave Ramsey. And most people probably listening to this probably know who
Mhm.
he is. People were just talking about, well, what am I supposed to do for a job? What am I supposed to do? And he kind of shared some of the same things. It's like, well, if you can wake up in the morning and do something, what would it be? And I mean, video games don't count. I guess now they kind of that might help today. There's
Yeah,
some
yeah.
jobs out there, but anyways, if you wake up in the morning and do what you want to do, what is it? And then what do you have an ability to do? And again, what kind of open doors are in front of you? And it was like it just clicked for me that, like, I know I'm called to youth ministry. And after just confirmation from even other people speaking in my life and just kind of going through the open doors, like, he just confirmed that. And so yeah, that was, I was 19 years old. And at first I thought, good, I can quit college and be a youth minister. I mean, it's not like they need an education.
Yeah, yeah.
Then I realized, you know what? Actually, it's probably a good idea to be trained in this. And my youth pastor, who has no formal education hardly at all, is the one that encouraged me to do that. And so I like finished at OU, then went to seminary, and just after that launched in full time ministry after that. So that's the story.
Well, I'm real big on just walking through doors that God opens, and especially when you don't know what to do next. And a lot of times we get in those points where we're not sure what to do next. And y'all had one of those a year or two ago, and we'll talk about that led to Good News Journey. But sometimes we get in those spots, and I'm a firm believer that just saying yes to the doors God opens will end up leading you where you're supposed to be. And I've told a story before about how I was in between churches, and I'd had those. My surrender to ministry was this aha, kind of one of those stories like your youth pastor had, just a, no, 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 I don't want to do this, God, I don't want to do this. Okay, finally, yes, okay, yeah, yeah. And then from that yes, every other yes that came in a very short period, within a couple months, I surrendered my life for salvation at 19. And then within about a month or so of that, had surrendered to ministry at camp. First thing I did, I got hired as an intern at a church I had no business being. They should have hired somebody else besides me, but they hired me. And then the girl that they hired for the summer intern. The day after I surrendered to ministry, we were at camp as sponsors, and she came. We talked before, but not deep. She came and we had like a deep 1 or 2 hour conversation about our faith and the future and where God's leading us and all this. And 2 years later, I married that girl, and we were married for almost 22 years. And so I just say, when
Yeah,
you start saying yes to God, He starts lining stuff up. And at the
it
time, you may
does.
not see it, but looking back, you can. And one thing I wanted to do is I wanted to be a Texas country singer songwriter. That was my goal. I was going to college as a backup for that. Like call it red dirt, I guess now, but I was playing at some bars and clubs and stuff, that kind of music and that lifestyle, which I didn't need to be in, but I was lost. So that gives me a little bit of an out, I guess, on that. Cause I mean, I technically knew better, but I wasn't living for the Lord at the time. And, and I said, one of my hardest struggles was saying yes to ministry was this is what I want, but I want to do music. I want to do this for you. I want to do this for me. And the cool thing is when I said yes to him, I had a band for a couple of years and we traveled and did camps. It's doing music, and every Sunday now, every Sunday and Wednesday, I get to stay. We do 2 services and I get to play electric guitar and sing. And so my dream, my goal, what I wanted, God gave me anyway. in a totally different deal
Yeah,
because it's utilized for him. But I think that's cool because saying yes to God, I was thinking I'm giving something up, and He's given me. I mean, for 23 or almost 24 years now, I've been able to use that gift and lead worship every Sunday,
yeah.
and it's what I wanted to do. He let me do it, so I think it's
Yeah,
great to
the
say
proverb
yes.
that says the proverb says, in a man's heart, he plans his course, but the Lord determines his steps." And as we've been
Mhm.
further down this road, as we get a little bit older, you look back and say, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly what's going on here. I kinda thought I should go this way," and sometimes that is the way the Lord wants us to go. At the same time, it's like, yeah, you might have a plan, but I'm gonna alter that a little bit, and I'm gonna determine your steps, even though you got these plans, and his ways are better than our ways. He's been faithful to reveal that to me, especially in the last few years, you know?
Yeah.
So
Well, he promises to give us when we honor him to give us the desires of our heart, because when we're living to
yeah,
honor him, our desires line up with his. But what's cool is that some of those desires that are ingrained with us are from him. We just want to use them for ourselves and not for him. And then when we
yeah.
agree to use those for his glory, he blesses us in it. So yeah, that's awesome. I appreciate you sharing that story too, of surrender to ministry, and especially the part about not, there's no big deal. It's just not a big light bulb moment. It's just like, this is what I want to do. And God give me opportunity, you know?
Yeah. You know, the book of Joshua talks about some pretty supernatural battles, like the walls of Jericho. I mean, that's like supernatural. The battle of Ai, where the sun stood still.
Hmm.
But there's like tons of other battles. Most of them, like 90% of them, were battles that you'd read about in like a history book anywhere else. There was no supernatural. If God just did that all the time, it would not be like supernatural in a sense, right? It wouldn't be a miracle
Hmm.
in a sense. And so I think that's good for us to know that sometimes, the Lord does these like undeniable, supernatural, just not normal stuff. But he usually just works with the normal stuff, and, that's also
Hmm.
just as important, and so it's good to remember that.
Yeah. So walk us through your ministry career a little bit and what led you to BGCO. Cause I know you were there
Yeah,
for
yeah.
quite a long time. So kind of walk us how ministry, that surrender to ministry from there to that position and then what you did
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, so I was basically kinda an intern associate at Woodland Hills Baptist Church under my youth pastor, Jamie, and, opportunities to kinda, like, maybe take churches during that time, but I really just wanted to, like, focus on school, and I wanted to stay under his leadership, and I'm so glad I did. But right as I finished school, I took a position in Idabel, Oklahoma, excuse me, at Trinity Baptist Church, and great season in my life. It was so far from home that we had to just really, create an identity in our life. It wasn't like mom and dad are near or families near, but also just an identity in ministry. I wasn't under Jamie's umbrella anymore. And so that was a great season. It was about 2 years and, still have deep friends there. And then I served at South Tulsa Baptist Church for 9 years. And it was a larger church and pastor was amazing and to this day still. And man, it was hard at first, but God really turned that ship. Through both those ministries, God really gave me a passion for evangelism. And actually, I kind of started with listening to The Way of the Master, Living
Hmm.
Waters Ministry, Ray Comfort and Kirk Cameron and all that. And it was like these guys are not just telling me how to share my faith; they're showing me how. Right? They're
Hmm.
actually doing it for real, and it was really intriguing to me. And it also was like I see how they're doing this. There's a plan for it, and like I could do that. And so I just started doing it personally. I remember the first time a telemarketer called, I had my piece of paper out. I'm like, "Hey, after this call, can I ask you a few questions?" And I just slowly kind of eased out really into evangelism, and then after I learned how to do it, I'm like, "This is the most exciting part of being a Christian." Right. And I've been missing out on it thinking that if I just live a good enough life, people ask me what's different about me, and then I'll get to share, which rarely happened, by the way. I just like was on fire, man. I was just like sharing the gospel with everybody and really just kind of stuck with me in my ministry, both of those ministries. And excuse me, I just kind of got a reputation for having some passion and some skill in doing evangelism, but also equipping other people. Even with the Baptist General Convention of Oklahoma, a lot of their events, they like I did some breakouts for YEC and just some other things. And eventually, an opportunity came for me to serve on staff as the youth evangelism and mission specialist. And so it was a just an awesome experience there. 9 years of just being able to not just invest in one group, but really invest in like a whole state and trying to help inspire and equip them to share the gospel. And so, yeah, it was just an awesome season. Got to serve at Falls Creek all season, all year, all summer. 10 weeks of summer, which was great. I mean, got to literally talk to 10% of our state's youth every single year. And got to lead in our state's mission sending organization, Go Students, and got to mobilize 2,700 people onto the mission field in about 100 different projects. And evangelism, a big part of that as well too. I led the call conference for those that feel called to ministry, just all these things to really just impact our state. And so we just love that season in our life. I will say one of the best seasons in our entire life. And so grateful to have that. And I'll never, ever forget that opportunity. I'm just so grateful, so thankful.
So, and that's when I met you because I've been taking students to Falls Creek. We're in Texas, neighboring state, but y'all let us still
Yeah.
come. You're good neighbors. And so, we've been coming. I guess I brought my first group there in 2004, uh, to, to there. So I've been coming for a long time. And so, and I took a couple of years off. I did a different ministry. And then when I came back, you were there because when I left, you weren't there yet. When I came back, you were serving there. And so, we met every time we go through to do the stuff, the registration, you would, hey, hey, hey. And then I remember I would get texts and I'm like, how does that guy, does he just text everybody? He must text everybody. He knows who everybody is. He remembers who everybody is. But anyway, but that's how we kind of met. But then I remember hearing a message about a year and a half ago. I think I saw it on your Facebook page or social media somewhere about that you were no longer going to be serving there. And so kind of walk us through that. Because I know that was kind of a big deal for you guys. I know we talked about that for you and your wife and kids. That was kind of a big, maybe unexpected and a difficult time, but kind of walk us through what happened there.
Yeah. So basically, it was financial reason at our convention, a restructure of sort. Working at a convention is different than a church. It's a little bit more corporate in a way, and so they wanted to hire more regional ministry partners, which are basically good pastors, that have been doing well. They want them to basically represent the convention and come work for the convention and invest in those other pastors. And for that to happen, some finances need to be freed up to be able to make that work. And so there are a few of us that lost our positions because of that restructure. And so it was a little shocking. I mean, actually, the year before, I had the third highest performance evaluation at the convention. So, and that was the first thing they said. This was not a issue of like performance at all. It's just it's a money issue. It's a structure change. And so it was kind of hard to take, man. It was a gut punch for sure because I really thought I was doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I was winning at it. We grew Go students from like 79 participants to like 580 participants. We grew the call conference from like 200 participants to like 750 participants. The weekend before I was let go, we had Jeff Orge there and Paul Chitwood, and it was like total success. And so almost like being called in the office was like, well, maybe they're going to say thanks or something. And I was a little shocked that my position was eliminated.
Pay
But
raise. Yeah, we're gonna pay you more
yeah,
money. Good
yeah.
job.
But I think about when Jesus, after he fed the multitudes, he told the disciples to get in the boat and go across, the Sea of Galilee back to Capernaum or whatever. And he was going to go off and pray. And I'm sure as he was walking off to pray, I'm sure he probably thought to himself, these guys are not going to like what's about to happen to them, right? Man, with the storms that came and the wind, and they're terrified, and thought they were going to die. And, but he's like, man, but I got to strengthen their faith, right? I got to strengthen their faith. And through it all, he called Peter out of the boat, man. He called him out on the water, called him out of the boat. And even though you hear that he looked around, he saw the waves and he fell, I'm telling you, that was a key moment in his life where Jesus called him out of the boat and he just trusted him. And I'm telling you, that probably impacted Peter's life than probably hardly any other moments you read about in scripture. And I think that God lets us have those moments too. And I think for us, man, he was calling us out of the boat, right? And I didn't feel great, and I didn't like it. I really didn't like it, but I really do think it's for our good. And I even think about too another scriptural example is when on this before Paul and Barnabas went on the second missionary journey, they got in a big argument, a big fight over John Mark, which is basically Barnabas's cousin,
Mm.
coming with him. And Paul's like, "No, he can't come, man. He's not he's unfit." And then Barnabas has got a different leadership style. He's like, the encouragement guy. He's like, "No, the whole point of the gospel is to lift people up, to bring them up." And they parted ways, and it sounds really bad. And I'm sure it was kind of weird for a while between Paul and Barnabas, but in John Mark especially. But later you find that, man, John Mark and Paul were actually friends. That towards the end of Paul's life, especially, hey, send in John Mark. He's dear to me.
Yeah.
But there were two ministries that were started because of that. Paul had a style, and Barnabas had a style, and it seems like a church split. It looks like that kind of. But in reality, no, there were two teams that probably did a lot more than if they just would have stayed together.
Mhm.
And, Paul went one direction and the door was closed. And then he went a different direction and the door was closed again. And I mean, he was hanging out in Troas. And I'm sure if you ask Paul, "What are you doing, Paul?" He'd probably say, "Man, I have no idea. Like, I just do not know." And he eventually got the vision of the Macedonian man saying, "Come over here." Right. And the wind was at his back. Before it was like he's trying stuff and the door kept closing. Door kept closing. He's trying stuff and the door kept closing. And then, man, it's the Macedonian man in the vision comes along, and then he's got the wind at his back over to Macedonia and going to a place he probably didn't originally think he would go. But because he went there, literally the gospel went to Europe for the first time and spread across the world. And
Mhm.
so I kind of see too, man. After my position was eliminated at Oklahoma Baptist, a door opened with Dare to Share Ministries, which, good friends with Greg Steer and still great friends with Dare to Share, love them. And the day I found out my position was eliminated, he actually sent me a job description. And I thought, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do. But just through some changes they had, and they decided to put a hold on the position itself. So God closed the door. Literally after prayer and fasting, God closed that door. I'm like, wow, okay. Next day, the International Mission Board reaches out to me about basically being over all of the IMB's packaged short-term mission trips. And I thought, this is awesome. This is what I'm supposed to do. They really wanted me to move to Richmond, Virginia, which moved my family across the country into a city that they don't know a soul. Also, I can do a job where I travel all the time. Made me a little bit reserved. But at the same time, I'm like, Lord, if this is what you called us to do, I was really excited about it because I love missions so much too. It's a big part of what I do. But I just felt like, man, I don't know about moving my family, especially my daughter's a senior and I've got two kids are coming right behind them. It's this core season of their life. And I think they sensed my hesitation about the move. And after prayer and fasting on that, they actually just said, hey, we think it'd be best probably just to go with somebody that's internal, at the IMB that's already there. And so God closed the door after prayer and fasting, man. And I'm like, when you pray and fast, a lot of times you're saying, "Okay, Lord, your will be done." But usually in your mind, you have an idea what you think that should be. And really
Mhm.
just God closed that door. And man, but just kind of after going through this, I had a friend that called me and it was really interesting. He said, "Brian, man, I just feel like the Lord is telling me to tell you that you should just keep going through the doors that God opens for you, or you should just keep moving in the direction God is blessing you." And he didn't know what that meant, but I kind of knew what that meant because, like, I never really stopped doing what God called me to do. I continued to like train churches in evangelism and coach leaders in gospel advancing ministry, and I just kept doing that. And God was continuing to open doors, to do that. I was actually went to a D now, and was it for First Baptist Joplin, and I spoke at it, and we had like some friends that we met with afterwards, and we just had lunch. And at the end of it, he sent me a check for $10,000 with us, and I didn't mention anything about starting a ministry or anything, but they just felt like they should give towards that. And And so one, it was like, thank you, Lord, because the severance was about to run out, you know? And then two, it was like, huh, like I wonder if people would support us if we started our own ministry. I never thought about that ever. And so I just put some feelers out to some people that I trust and that I mean I was scared to death, you know, I said, "Hey, if we were to do that, would that be something you'd ever consider partnering with us on?" And we had some just tremendous like yeses to that, you know. And it was just enough. It wasn't like it was definitely a step of faith to start our own ministry, but it wasn't a step of blind faith, right? And so, you know, from that good news journey was birthed, and it's a ministry to help churches, help individuals in the area of evangelism and missions, and coaching leaders in gospel advancing ministry. That's something that's really important to me is coaching guys. I did a call yesterday. We had 22 guys on the call and just talking about disciple multiplication and just different values of gospel advancing. And anyways, we just launched into it. Our pastor of the church we're going to, Ray, at our church plant here in Edmonds, he helped me start the nonprofit process because he's done that before and got the nonprofit, did the 501c3, and then just had a few, you know, a few meetings with some potential donors and cast the vision and you know, people gave enough for us to kind of get started. And then God just provided for us as we went, and God kept opening more and more doors to do trainings, to speak at churches, to speak at DNOWs or camps. And I actually got to this in 2025. That first year, I got to speak at least 65 individual speaking events. You know, and that doesn't include like every little thing. I mean, I do jail ministry and speak in prisons and stuff, but I'm talking about churches reaching out to me. And one of those events was yours, man, kind of towards the beginning of that, by the way. So thank you very much. And so,
Well, I'm gonna be
yeah,
honest.
this,
Within about a week or two of you finding out, I saw that and I was like, "What can we do to help?" Because I love Brian and I love his passion for the gospel and for training students. And I was like, and we were planning at that point, and we'd had a band picked out, but we didn't have a speaker yet. And I was like, so I sent it out to some of the other guys that I was planning it with, and I was like, "What about this?" And they're like, "If you think he's good," I was like, "Oh, he'll be great. Let's do it." So that was part of. So I'm glad we were on the ground floor of Good News Journey. I'm
that's right,
proud of
man.
ourselves for that.
Yeah. Those were the days where like, Lord, let's just see how this goes, you know? And God just kept opening doors. The whole year I got to speak to around 15,000 people this year and, you know, did those events
Man, that's
and
awesome.
been coaching about 80 leaders. And, you know, and God has just kind of provided for us, you know, as we went. It was never like, here's a big amount. You don't have to worry about a thing for a long time. It was always kind of just enough, you know, manna from heaven. Right. And yeah, it's been
Mhm.
awesome, an awesome first year of Good News Journey. And so, so thankful. I'll never forget ever this year and the people that were in my life this year. I will never forget that as long as I live. And so just grateful.
Well, I know your wife and kids, your family was supportive because anytime you're in ministry, you got to be in it all together as a family because it doesn't work doing it by yourself. So I know they've been supportive. But what was it like trying to lead them to be a godly husband and father and providing and all that stuff when you weren't 100% sure where that was going to come from?
Yeah. You know, I think I did pretty good, but I wasn't perfect at it, you know, but I think I did pretty good. I did in my mind, I thought our kids are going to remember when dad lost his job, right? Our kids are going to remember this. And just, I thought to myself, man, not that I just want to put on a face for them, but this is where our faith is real, right? This is where we don't just talk about it, we walk it out. And so I think they did pretty good. I mean, obviously, like our smaller kids, not as, you know, they don't quite understand as much of what's happening. But our older two, yeah, they understand. And I didn't want bitterness to, you know, sit in or whatever. And so yeah, just tried to like, you know, live out, man, this faith and this faith walk, this journey, right? This journey that we were on. And I just love it that especially now we're like a year past this, that we can look back and say, see kids, see how God was faithful? Do you see that Romans 8:28 is actually not just a cute verse you write on a card somewhere, that all things do work together for the good of those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And so it's been good. It's not been easy. My wife too, ladies in our life, they need that consistent, stability is really important for them. And so I'm so proud of my wife, Candace, that she kind of walked this out with us where that stability, it wasn't like, anybody's taking care of us besides God, right? And so they all
Mhm.
got to see that God, was with us and he provided for us and he opened doors that would not have been opened unless he kind of pushed us out of the boat to do this. And I mean, I would never have got to start my own ministry if that were the case, right? If I was still working for somebody else, at the time I couldn't have done what I've done. So I think they see that, and I think it'll be an impression in their childhood. I think this that always remember the year 2025, right? Even in my Bible, I wrote that year a lot down when the Psalms are a perfect example. David was either like, "You're amazing, God," or "Why have you forsaken me?" And I think in our life
Mhm.
too, you kind
Mhm.
of when you're going through trial, you see those parallels so much. But yeah, man, I think they did a pretty good job. I wasn't perfect, but I think we made it through all right.
So God moved you into that season of starting your own ministry, and that, from what I could tell, and I get the updates that you send out monthly or whatever like that, and I read all that stuff and try to keep up with what's going on. And we've talked about some mission stuff that we're doing that you've been, because you're still doing mission things and trips and planning mission opportunities for people, and of course training and evangelism and preaching the gospel and sharing your faith and just giving opportunities for people to come to faith at events and different things too. And then you got to do in December, you had some radio stuff. Like, talk about that a little bit, because that was kind of a neat deal.
Yeah. So I just went through every door that God opened for me. I'm talking every door. If somebody said I should call somebody, I called them. If somebody says, hey, you should reach out to such and such, I did. And kind of through reaching out to some connections, I got involved in this group of like nonprofit leaders in Oklahoma City. And through that, there was some leadership from the House FM, kind of a Oklahoma, even into Kansas radio station. And they kind of learned about my ministry and they said, hey, I wonder if we can partner and have you on. We every so often have nonprofits on to do certain things and highlight different ministries. And after doing some calls with them, they said, actually, we think we want you to do this like month long, campaign about sharing the gospel during the holiday season. And so that's what it was about, like basically sharing Christ during Christmas, during the holiday season. And I did these little 1 minute spots, and they played them 3 times a day from November the like 16th until December the 26th. So you got to do these spots about just different parts of evangelism, whether that's gospel urgency or gospel strategy or fluency or, kind of we did the good news gospel conversation strategy. We broke it up into different pieces and was just able to help train people on the radio, but also give them some tips on how you can, share the gospel during Christmas or Thanksgiving or with your family and stuff. And I'm doing that next year, but also am going to do some other spots with them kind of in the spring as well too. So the Lord has opened some doors there, and so that's just kind of cool. Through that same group, I got to do a thing for this. It was called Unite OKC, and it was a big citywide event. And I wasn't the main speaker for it, but I got to put together the invitation team for that. And it was kind of like what I did at Falls Creek and just got to be a part of that event. And that's opened a lot of doors too. So I just like went through all of the open doors and they kind of led to more open doors. And so not that you just, do every little thing, but I just kind of said, put my yes on the table and just let the Lord, you know, close the doors as he needs to close them. And man, it's really served me well. And so grateful for all those little things for sure.
So here recently in the last couple months, along with the radio thing and those doors being opened, another door's open to be back in the trenches as a church staff pastor again, serving in youth ministry. So tell us how that happened and where you're
Yeah,
at
yeah.
now.
Yeah, it was in the late fall of this year, church reached out to me, and pastor at Choctaw Road Baptist Church reached out to me and said, "Hey, I would love just to visit with you for you to consider something." And I kind of thought it was just another like again, I go through all the open doors, right? And so I mean, there's been lots of conversations at staff positions and all that stuff that I just go through the open doors, and God's made it clear if I should keep going or not. And I thought it was just another one of those things to check off the box. And but I visited with him met with him on the phone and met with some of their people at church, and I'm just learning about this opportunity to serve, and really just did a ton of prayer and fasting and wise counsel on that, because it was not going to be something where I was going to be asked to stop doing Good News Journey. I mean, that was something that was really clear, is like I can still do that. It'll look a little different, but I can still do that. And I just think that just hearing that, and also just learning about the church. I mean, the church is it just has a lot of the same values that I have, man. They're value reaching people, and really just sensing in my spirit that I'm supposed to do this. And so it's for kind of two positions. It's a high school pastor and a missions pastor position, which is, I think about three major things that I've got deep passion for. That's teenagers, because man, 75% of people come to faith before age 18, like 95% before age 30. So young people is always going to be like passion of mine. And so be able to do that. And I still have kids in youth group age, to be their youth pastors appealing to me. And so having that youth area, being able to impact there, but also to like this still get to do missions and evangelism, and even with the church doing missions for the church, but also continuing to have that kind of capital C impact through Good News Journey. Just being able to, I guess, have a deep and wide opportunity. I will say, like, working the convention was awesome, but the whole time you kind of do miss like the local church impact. Most places I went, I didn't really know hardly anybody, right? I might know the minister that's there, a pastor, a youth minister, but most people were kind of a stranger to me. And I'm just all over the state, all these things and doing all the things and or at camp or whatever. And there is this like, just miss the local church in a sense of um teaching people, not just teaching them things, but teaching them to obey. Right. The Great Commission doesn't just say, go make disciples, teaching them everything I've commanded you. It says, go make disciples, teaching them to obey everything I've commanded, or observe everything
Mhm.
I've commanded you. And it's easy to teach people things, right? But it's a lot harder to teach them to obey. And that's the role of a shepherd, and that's the role of like local church, right? And so man, the desire to have like a flock and a local congregation to go deep with is something that I've longed for a long time. But also, man, I love what I was doing for the Capital C Church. But then to be able to have both of those things is like the dream, right? Deep and wide. And being able to continue with Good News Journey of having impact with leaders, of mobilizing people onto the mission fields, training, large amounts of people in evangelism. My bold vision is actually to train 50,000 people in evangelism before the end of the year 2030. And I mean, it's actually pretty doable, but and so I really feel like honestly, the Lord has turned things for my favor and for my good, right? And I'm starting to kind of see that now of like, wow, because I would have never have had an opportunity to have my own ministry if I wouldn't have lost my position. If I hadn't done this full time, and I'm talking that's last year, I worked so hard, like unbelievably hard. One, I just knew I needed to get the ministry off the ground. But two, it's also like there's this, providing for my family kind of stuff too that really is, puts a fire under you.
Mhm.
But I always compare it to like, when you launch a rocket, it takes a ton of fuel, ton of energy to get it off the ground. And like kind of having this year where I just fully 100% focused my attention on the ministry that I started. It just got that thing off the ground, and it probably wouldn't have happened if I would have took the Dare to Share job, or the IMB job or gotten a church right off the bat, and it's almost like the Lord is saying, wait, you have to go through this time, and I'm so glad. And also I would say kind of part of this too is just, when it comes to the finances, it was kind of always enough, which is hard for my wife long term. And even us, when we've got kids in college now, we're paying for cars and car insurance. It's the most expensive season in our life right now. And it's like, and we're living on faith,
Mhm.
and so doing that for a year, and it's we actually, we had some fundraiser stuff, in the fall as well, about the same time when Choctaw called. And I kind of thought, now there's some people in the room that could probably write some checks that would fund us next year. You know what I mean? But God didn't answer that way. But at the same time, Pastor Rick calls me and asks about this position. I'm like, huh, well, I wonder what that's about. It's almost like God answered that prayer in a way that I wasn't expecting. Right. So to be able to be in a church staff position, in a healthy church, but still get to do Good News Journey is just really kind of, man, worked out to have both deep and wide. And man, I'm excited about that. And, you know, if I would have known a year ago where I'd be at now, man, it would have been nice just to know that, but it was pretty terrifying going through the process. But I look back and say, man, God, you're so faithful. You're so good. You do make a path. You had this planned all along and trusted him. And it was definitely hard along the way, but excited about the future with Choctaw Road. Man, the church is great. I think we had almost 2,900 people on campus last week at church. Almost 3,000 people is like awesome.
Wow.
There's, you know, 220 students and also adults, 250 probably on Wednesday nights. And getting to have not only a local church impact, but in a church that is, man, is in itself tremendous amount of fruit that's from it, and I get to work with some amazing people, and have a lot of help along the way. I'm not, there's a middle school person and also an admin person for the youth, and then missions. There's an admin for that too. And then through this all too, the ministry, my wife Candace has come on with us at Good News Journey and is the ministry support coordinator. And so she's handling lots of the logistics and the behind the scenes stuff. And I'm doing mainly the front facing things. And so it's a way now we're able to do a bunch and minister to a lot of people because we have a lot of help and a lot of support. And I just like, if I would have like known that, a year ago, I'd been like, that's great, Lord, not worried about a thing. And, but I just love it now that it's finally sort of, I feel like God has kind of showed us this full picture. And I mean, when people going through struggle or through trials, man, I just always want to talk to them. I always want to just minister to them, and be able to say, "Hey, I completely know how you feel." And just on the other side of things, God is faithful, right? He is faithful. It looks different for different people, but He is faithful, and so we're grateful for that, and grateful for the future of Choctaw Road. Grateful for the future of Good News Journey, and love getting to do stuff like this. I want to keep doing that, and I want to keep reaching even to your listeners, man. I would love to get to serve them in the area of evangelism and missions. That would be amazing. And so, also, I think I'll say this too. I know I've been talking for a while here. That I do think that being in the trenches does even give you a little bit more like weight in trying to minister to the capital C church. A little bit more because you're not just on the outside looking in, you're actually doing it with them. And so I've noticed that too, that it's like when I used the word at the coaching call yesterday, it's like instead of you guys, it's like we, like us, like me. And so I'm excited about just
Mhm.
that element as well.
Man, I'm excited for you. I'm happy that God is blessing you guys and your family and your ministry with Good News Journey and with the church. And We'll post a link to Good News Journey in the description here so people can get on the website, check it out. They can see your vision for 2030 because I know that's all on there. All that information is there. And it has your contact information if people want to reach out, if they want evangelism training for themselves, for their church, for men's group, youth group, whatever, that information is all there. Brian, man, I want to thank you for being with us today. It's a pleasure to have you. I want to thank you guys for listening. We'll catch you next time on Call to Lead.